Well, hey, howdy. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John. Howdy, fellas.
Hello.
Today, we are talking about getting started with Mastodon, the social platform, not the metal band or the animal. We're going to talk about what it is. First of all, I only knew it was a thing a couple of weeks ago, so I am the perfect target audience for today's show. We're going to talk about how it works, how to get started, how to sign up, and considerations for brands versus individuals. So given that it is not an animal or a metal band, which they are, but not in this context. We're not talking about those today. Chris, what is Mastodon as a social platform?
Mastodon is what is called a decentralized social network. It looks, feels, and operates pretty much like Twitter at first. A couple of surface differences: instead of 280 characters, you're up to 500. The individual posts, instead of calling them tweets, are called toots, which you can
Not a fan.
You're losing me already.
But
okay.
What makes it different is that it is decentralized. It is a federated social network. Here's what that means. Most of the time with our social networks that we use today, they are centralized. You go to facebook.com, twitter.com, linkedin.com. And yes, underneath the hood, there's very, very complex IT architecture. But from the end user perspective, you just go to this place, you sign in, and you talk to people. That central control means that when a social network company changes things up, you don't really get a choice, right? Twitter just underwent a change of management, and there's been some pretty dramatic, not necessarily positive changes. We don't have control over that. A decentralized, federated social network is one in which individual entities essentially put up their own servers and they all talk to each other. The model that people understand without question is the original, the OG federated social network, email. Every company has its email servers. There are big email providers like Gmail and Hotmail. There's small ones like the one at your company. If you're a real nerd, like a lot of us were in the 90s, you maybe even set up your own email server at one point. I remember when I joined my first startup, I was responsible for the administration of the email server itself. You control your email server, you control the policies on it, but of course, because of the nature of the protocols involved, SMTP, POP, and IMAP, your email server can talk to any email server around the world. And as long as you're not a spammer, those servers connect, and your emails seamlessly go from your Gmail account to your Trust Insights account to your Hotmail account, and so on and so forth. That's one aspect. The second aspect is because it is federated and server-based, every Mastodon instance or server is its own little collective in addition to speaking to the federation. So what happens on your server, on the server you're on, has its own policies. For example, we've talked in the past on this show about things like Discord. Discord is semi-federated, right? Your Discord server or your Slack group, like the Analytics for Marketers Slack that we run, has its own policies, its own culture, its own community, its own rules. And with Mastodon, if you choose to set up your own server, you can also set those rules and say, hey, here's the things that we don't allow on this server. You can't control what happens to the rest of the federation, just like you can't tell people what they can and can't email on their own servers. But within your company, if you have an email server in your company, you can say, hey, you can't email certain things, right? You can't have attachments over a certain size. When I worked in financial services, you absolutely could not email customer information. Right? There was actually were programs on the server that looked for things like, hey, that looks like a credit card number. I'm not even going to send this message. And so that's what Mastodon is. It is a social network that has global reach, but also local communities that are server based. And when you start using it, you find a place that looks good, or if you're super nerdy, you start your own.
Okay. I'm going to pause there and sort of repeat back what I think I'm hearing. So I understand the example of email, other companies having it, but in terms of a social network, I don't think people consider email a social network. I understand the example though. So would it be in some ways akin to you have your own Slack instance, and if you're working with a client, for example, who has their own Slack instance, you can create a connected instance where you invite those guests into yours and vice versa, but you never really leave your instance of Slack.
Exactly right.
Okay. That I can understand. That makes sense. And so if you are a Slack user, then that would be a great example. If you're not a Slack user, then if you think about what AOL chat rooms, for example, you have separate chat rooms, like one for people who love puppies, one for people who love popcorn, and one for people who love movies. And then you sort of spin off almost like the Venn diagram of the people who love puppies and movies, bringing those two places together. That's a very basic, very oversimplistic example, but basically it sounds like, there's a lot of opportunity if you want to get involved. Now, why is everybody talking about Mastodon right now?
Everyone's talking about Mastodon for a couple of reasons. One, its decentralized nature means that it is immune to having a change of management, right? It is a project.
I see.
You on your own Mastodon server could say, okay, Katie, we're not allowing any guys to join us. It's a women's only server. And that would be okay. That would be okay. Women in Analytics, the organization that you volunteer with, might seriously want to consider that. And so what we see on screen here, this is Mastodon's interface. This is mastodon.social, which is the original home server. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's a couple different menus. There's the Explore menu, which is sort of home base. There's the local menu, which is the stuff that's happening only on this server within this community. And then there's the federated base, which they don't have currently set up right now, where you can see what's happening throughout the Mastodon Federation. And so your server, you get to determine the rules. If you say, cat owners are forbidden from joining the server, you can do that. That is within your rights. If you say, I want to be people of a specific gender or a specific political orientation, again, these are private instances, and you may choose to do with them what you will. So a lot of people who are talking about things like censorship and other social networks, Mastodon very much is an answer to that, where you can say, yeah,
I see.
Spin up your own instance, you do with it however you want, and you can join. Your server will talk to the Federation, but if people want to have conversations and stuff just in their community, they can, and they can embrace whatever points of view that they want. The second thing that's interesting about Mastodon is, again, it's like email. There is no email company like there is a Facebook company. So as long as servers exist and are federated to each other, no one can shut it down, no one can censor it, and no one can assign arbitrary rules. That means that for people who are interested in having something that maybe they own or maybe that they run, they can. We've been talking internally about having Trust Insights run its own Mastodon instance. If we wanted to, we'd stand up that server, run it, and then the people who are on our server with us would have access to the social network in perpetuity, whether or not other servers come and go within the Federation. Again, it's like email, companies come and go, servers come and go, but email stays in existence.
All right. John and I are going to talk amongst ourselves for a second. All right, John, how are you feeling about all of this? Like, is Mastodon something that you think you're going to sign up for and use? I know that you've been exploring it a bit, and obviously you've been following what's been happening on other social platforms such as Twitter, and now Facebook/Meta just did all their layoffs and all sorts. So I want to hear your thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, it's funny. Mastodon has been on my radar for a long time. There's a guy I follow, Ethan Zuckerman, who is now out of UMass, and he studies basically media and the role of the internet in government and society. And so he's followed this forever. And his big thing was this idea of federating is the fact that he has a server set up for his team, and then they federate a bunch of stuff. So if you want to like spend, once a week tweaking your social network so you only see exactly what you want to see, you can totally do that with this setup.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really kind of been a, super geeky social media thing for 3 or 4 years now. It's been pretty, in fact, I got going on 5 or 6 years at least. And there's never been really much impetus for people to like, hey, go do a lot more work over here. But now with, Twitter being on fire this week, suddenly everybody wants to go here. And it's been amazing to see, like, as soon as I got into Mastodon, the first post was like, this place was awesome 2 weeks ago. Now it sucks. All the Twitter people are here. I hate this. I'm leaving. And they're totally right too, because it's kind of like they had this awesome book club, and now suddenly the bar let out, and there's like 500 people banging on your door today. And
that is a really great example.
Yeah, you can totally see like everybody's pissed, because they were even joking there. Like in Mastodon, it's a joke. Like if you get shared like 6 or 7 times, you've gone viral. Like that's a big deal if something gets passed around like 3 or 4 times. And yeah, so yeah, like all that to get to, I don't see any reason for me to kind of jump over here yet. I didn't see any servers, and it's the Discord problem that we've had, right? Like we talk about Discord, and there's so much going on in Discord, but then you look at the server list and you're like, well, there's nothing that I'm like, oh my God, I have to talk to these people because they're talking about the stuff I want to hear about. And it was interesting. I searched for marketing on the server list and got 0 hits. There was absolutely nothing. So that's kind of funny. Of course, some would say that's an opportunity. I could set up the first marketing server, which would then obviously be completely like the neighborhood would be torched and burned, within 30 minutes. But if we could make it past the first week and still live, there may be somewhere to go with it. So it's cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I'm kind of interested in the federated side of it and how that works. I mean, so I imagine your client is just saying, hey, it's okay for you to go get messages over on this place, but kind of what kind of algorithm happens there as far as like what federated stuff gets shown versus the local stuff? Is the local stuff always priority? And there's a lot of questions, on that side of it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at today.
It's interesting because I think, a lot of our audience are, marketers and data scientists. And I think that they're always trying to understand, how does this impact me? What do I need to think about? Do I need to be here? It's a social platform. Therefore, someone's going to ask me, are we on it? What are we doing? How are we mining the data? And from everything I'm hearing from both of you, it sounds like a lot like Reddit. This is not the place to be doing that. Like, don't sign up just to start to like, pitch your brand or, advertise. Like, this is not what this is for. Like, proceed with, like, you need to understand the culture of it first.
Yeah, there's an interesting point with that, though. There is a major difference in that Reddit is totally tech bros. Like, people will make fun of Santa Claus and, like rag on everybody. There is a lot of stuff in Mastodon that gay and trans community was involved in a lot of the earliest development of it, and privacy and the ability to, that was another thing they were complaining about. Like, somebody shared a Mastodon thing over on Twitter, and they're like, they didn't even ask me. Who shares without asking? I'm like, dude, you obviously are spending no time on Twitter, because that's all Twitter is people sharing without asking. But it is really interesting how it's almost 2 polar opposites, but they basically come back to the same place of just what you said. Like, yeah, dude, you guys are screwing up our culture. Like, we don't want you here.
The other big thing, Katie, that you mentioned just now is that's really important and different about Mastodon. Because of its nature, there's no advertising. There isn't even an opportunity for marketers to advertise, because again, it's this network of servers. Like, you can't run email ads on somebody else's email server. It's you can send them spam, but they don't have to accept it. They can just bounce it right out. Right. And the same is true of Mastodon. In your server, you have complete control over what comes in and what goes out.
And so there's no like promote button, there's no advertise button, but that doesn't stop people from organically saying, hey, check out my cool new thing, which it sounds like if they're doing that in your server, you can bounce them. However, if they have set up a server specifically to promote their stuff, they can do that, but nobody has to sign up and listen to it.
Exactly. And as a server admin, one of the things that you can do is you can say, I want to feature certain hashtags on my server. I want to feature certain profiles. So if we were to set up a Trust Insights server, for example, I would put all 3 of our profiles. It's like, hey, these are the people who are running this walled garden. Here are the pinned posts and stuff. So you can you have a lot of control in your corner of the neighborhood. So from a brand and marketing perspective, the big public servers, you're not gonna be able to market to them there. And if you misbehave, you're just going to get the boot. The opportunity is the same as Slack and Discord and Telegram, etc. When you run your own server, it's your community. You set the rules. You decide what can and can't happen. When you're looking at analytics for marketers, like we have a dedicated space for people to promote their stuff, and otherwise we say no spamming. Right? If you're spamming, we're banning. And so the same is true for a Mastodon instance. Your server, it's your living room, your rules.
So it sounds like it's a lot like just you're finding just yet another platform to create your own community, to bring people together, like-minded, and just sort of have those conversations here instead of on Twitter, instead of on Discord, instead of on Slack, instead of in Reddit. Like this is just yet another place where you could do that if you so felt like doing so. But in terms of sort of the play for marketing, it's probably, unless you're looking to bring like a customer community together or audience, of your stuff, there's not really a big play for marketers. It's more of just like a personal and professional place to network or just to connect with people or talk with people versus go in with a hard sell.
Exactly, which is one of the biggest problems that marketing is facing right now. Our audience is fragmenting everywhere as more central hubs break, like Twitter or Facebook, whatever. People scatter to the winds. They flow into Discord. They flow into Mastodon. They're increasingly flowing into places we can't control, we can't see, we can't advertise. And so the primary imperative for marketing is you've got to have your own community. You have to have some place where like-minded people that like you can gather. And if you don't, you will be at a substantial disadvantage because you can't go chase these people down. There's no way to do it. There's no way to advertise to them. Your best bet is, at that point, is extremely expensive, broad advertising. But the audience is slipping. The publicly accessible audience is slipping away. It's one of the things that has come out in both Facebook stuff and Twitter stuff this week is, and I saw this last week in Google's earnings calls, ad revenue is down everywhere by a big amount. Advertisers are like, nope. Part of it's economic, but part of it is also people are leaving. People are going to private places where they can be among the people that they care about and they like, and not spending time in the central public hubs. We were just having a conversation on analytics for marketers in one of the threads about how public social media for people is like, I'm not there anymore. I'm here.
If you want to join that conversation, you can do so for free. trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. You will find myself and John and Chris wreaking havoc on a daily basis, but having conversations in a private community. It's private in the sense that you can't access it publicly, but it's free to join. You don't need to subscribe to anything. You don't need to pay us to join. We want as many people who want to be there and engage. And it sounds like, again, I keep making this comparison, but Mastodon is brand new to me. It sounds like it could be very similar in nature of it's a place to start a community or a place to join a community similar to a Discord.
Very similar. And what makes it different than that is that semi-public nature, the federation, right? So you post, hashtags are important on Twitter and Instagram. They are essential on Mastodon. If you want, because the only way you can search across the federation is by things like hashtags. Just a couple of obvious things here. You will notice in Mastodon, like here we have this person can see their handle at Thomas Fuchs. That is a local user. The one below, two below it, at EU Commission at socialnetwork.europa.eu, that is a federated user. So in this particular server, they've chosen to bring in select content from other servers that are visible to its users. In this case, the European Commission. And so a full Mastodon handle looks like that. It's your @ sign, your handle, and then the server that you are on. So for us, it would be like at Katie Robert at trustinsights.social would be your Mastodon handle if we created our own server. And then when you're on Mastodon in our server instance locally, you just be at Katie Robert. But then if somebody from outside of our server in the Federation wanted to interact with you or tag you, they would do at Katie Robert at trustinsights.social.
Which so totally rolls right off the tongue.
It's like email addresses with an extra @ handle in front of it.
Ay.
Yeah, so that is, the user experience is a little bit wonky as you get set up because you can't create an account until you pick a server. You know, you have to figure out, okay, what's going to be my home base, and at which point you can pick your name. But that doesn't mean that somebody else can't pick a different server and take your name. You know, you can have multiple of the same name, and then again, because of the federated nature, it could actually look like it's you, but it's just coming from a different server.
Right, which is an important point is that brands might want to consider is by setting up a brand server, you can say like, yeah, this is our official handle, you know, at target.social. Like that is the only official instance that, you know, anyone else is imposter.
So it sounds like considerations for brands and individuals, even if you don't plan to use Mastodon right away, it's like anything else. Just go ahead and grab your handle so that nobody else can grab it. And then you can figure out if it makes sense for you to do something with it. But let's talk a little bit about the UX. So obviously, like this is, you know, Chris, you've already signed up or signed in. Like, what am I looking at? Just here's what's publicly available and I haven't signed in yet. Like, walk me through. I'm brand new to Mastodon. I don't even have my username. Like, where do I start?
The first place you would start would be the create account. And this is where there's kind of a problem right now. And in fact, you'll see this in the Mastodon in the news tab. The problem is that Twitter users have caused a Mastodon meltdown. I go here to create an account and says, hey, we're full. Right, we're full. Find another server. Okay, cool. Let's find another server. Where do I find how do I find a server? Okay, do I want public organization, private individual? Do I want servers that have manual review or instant access? So let's go just choose instant access, right? And so these are the servers that are listed in the directory that are currently accepting new users, right?
So it's like trying to find a new doctor.
Exactly. Network health, 1.3 million active users, up 268%. Right? And you can see these are different, you know, TechHub.social, a hub primarily for passionate technologists, but everyone is welcome. This one is free open community for Wales and the Welsh, right? So if that's your community, that would be there. Climate justice. And you can sign up to, you can create multiple accounts if you want to. That can, you know, get pretty thorny after a while. And then if you're a brand, you might want to set up, you know, a Walmart.social Mastodon server that you could then list, you know, the official Mastodon server of Walmart Corporation. Come on in. Deals every Wednesday.
Okay. I'm gonna stop you again because I feel like now I've gotten lost again. So let's say I'm brand new to this. Do I create one single username and password? Or do I need, because each of these says create account, and that to me says I would need to be Katie Robert at toot.wales, Katie Robert at mindly.social, Katie Robert at climatejustice.social.
You pick a home server where you want to live.
Okay, so I would pick one, but then I could visit other servers. Like I could be Katie Robert at toot.wales. And then Katie Robert at toot.wales visiting mindly.social.
That's right. Because every server has its own URL. Like, you know, Mastodon.online is its own server. You can see that. So like when we were looking at the initial timeline of toots, if you've got that at, you know, socialnetwork.europa.eu, that's somebody else's server. So that's another way to find all these different servers. But you have your home base, and then you can, like email, you can explore other places, but you have your home base.
I see. I can see why, everyone broke Mastodon. Because I can see it looks like it wasn't set up to handle this many users. That wasn't the purpose.
Right. And here's the thing, on the back end, many of these servers are really nothing more than just literal servers, right? And so as you add users, as those users do stuff like upload animated GIFs and stuff, that consumes resources. A server can only handle so much load. Part of it being decentralized means that there isn't one place that has to maintain this huge IT infrastructure. But part of it being decentralized means that every server has to essentially run itself. And there are hosting companies that are starting to pop up. There's one, Masterhost. They're like, hey, we're closed. We can't afford, we can't spin up any new instances. So there's a lot of scaling that the community is not ready to do yet. And the process for setting up a server is a little technical.
Yeah, you were sharing that with me earlier. And I think I commented something like, if you're struggling with it, then us, average folks who don't have superhuman technical powers, are definitely not going to be able to figure it out. But John, have you only joined, or did you also set up a server?
Oh yeah, no, I did not want to get involved in setting up a server. Like, that just seems like an absolute headache. Because I've seen many posts in many of the different on the other servers saying like, don't upload videos here, you're gonna kill us, like we can't take this. But I would be interested. So Chris, when you set one up, is it, can you just get a Docker container, then download one that's pre-built, or do you have to set up a server and then install a bunch of stuff and make it work? I mean, is it like...
So here's the general process. First, you need a domain name. I went out and bought trustinsights.social. You then need to put some kind of protections in front of it. So we're big fans of Cloudflare. So I've put up Cloudflare. You have to connect to an email service for the notifications. So I've plugged our Amazon simple email stuff into Cloudflare so that that Amazon's doing the email delivery, because otherwise, I have to set my mail server, which is not fun. And then we need
Wait, so I'm sorry, you're going through this pretty quickly. So first and foremost, I need to buy a URL.
If you want to run your own server, that's correct.
So that's obviously very different from setting up your own Discord server. You don't need to buy a URL for that.
That's correct.
Okay, so I bought my URL, I put protections on it, which is Cloudflare, and then I have to hook up an email hosting service?
Yes.
And I can't, okay. Wow.
So your choices are things like SendGrid, Mailgun, Amazon SES. We already have an Amazon SES account, so I just reused that.
Right,
okay.
But we're at like pain level 8 already of like setting stuff up. You're building. The only thing you haven't done is like buy 8 graphics cards and put them in your crate in the server location.
So it's funny you mentioned that.
I can see why a large global brand like a Target, for example, they would have the resources to set up their own server, and it would be in their best interest to do so. But, a company like Trust Insights, where you're looking at all of us, maybe not the best use of our time.
So then the next step is the actual server, right? So you need to get a server. So this is, I stood up a server on Linode. Full disclosure, they are a client of our company. I bought this server, which is $10 a month. Chose the right number of cores and stuff like that. And now, and that takes you to the process where you log into a command line and you start building the server. Now, John, to your point, it is a Docker container. So you need to install Docker on the server. And then you start configuring, once you've got Docker installed, then you bring down a Mastodon image from the Mastodon social. And at that point, you start building all the components to it in the container. Then you turn the container on, and then you verify that the web interface is working. This next step, we're already 30 minutes into the show, so we're not going to do this today. This next step takes about, if you're proficient with the command line and Linux and server configuration takes about 45 minutes. If you're not proficient, it takes about 3 years.
Oh my god, dude, that's
So I would be on the
Jesus.
3-year track.
Yes.
So there's like this huge INI file that you have to like go through and like tweak all these things to.
Oh no, it's much worse than that. There's actually 5 or 6 different ones scattered throughout the server that you need to configure, because you have to configure Mastodon itself and Nginx and your internal firewall, and then you have to if you're going to run email locally, you have to configure your SMTP server, which is typically Postfix. There's a database server you have to install, which is PostgreSQL, and then there's file handling system called Redis that you have to install as well.
Okay. So I didn't get any of that, but what I did take away was, if you are a company considering standing up your own server on Mastodon, I would recommend you really, really, really stop and think about the use case for why your company needs its own. Because I do know servers, and I know that servers are never just like a one and done. There's a whole maintenance involved with servers. There's a lot that can go wrong with servers. And so making sure you're really prepared to stand it up, own it, maintain it. And then you also need, once you actually have the community, someone needs to, moderate and manage that community just like any other community. It's not a small undertaking. It's not like signing up for a Twitter handle and then just, posting a couple of things here and there. So, I mean, Chris, this is, for someone like me who doesn't do all of this, the server, like, this is overwhelming.
Yes, I would say if you are a company that already has a data center and you already have IT folks that administer like your own internal email server and stuff, then this is just another box in the room.
Sure.
If you are a company that, like that, I'm thinking of like our friend Ginny Dietrich at Spin Sucks, where everything is outsourced and stuff like that, and you don't have an IT team. This is something you're going to outsource to. If the growth of Mastodon continues, if it becomes more accepted, if the general population starts to use it more, I would definitely foresee agencies, standing up to specialize in it. The same way that there are people who now specialize in Discord and community management and Slack. These are all specializations. I would not advise that you try this on your own unless you enjoy it, right? So I enjoy this stuff, so I'm totally fine with monkeying around with it. I would do this in my free time anyway. If you don't enjoy server administration, or it's just not your skill set, this is a bad idea, because one of the challenges is this is a publicly accessible server. And if you're not good at server administration and things like IT security, this is a disaster waiting to happen, because you will have personally identifiable information on a server that is legally yours under your control.
I want to just repeat that, because that's a really important point. This is a publicly accessible server. And if you are standing up a publicly accessible server and do not have everything secured and locked down, you then run the risk of sharing personally identifiable information, whether you meant to or not, which can get you into a lot of legal trouble. So definitely that goes back to, if you are considering standing up your own Mastodon server, I would really challenge you to understand the use case as to why you need your own. Now, with that, so Chris, the flip side of that is, as a user, what kind of due diligence do I need to do before joining a server to know that my information is protected?
The big question is, who runs it? Right? So here's the thing. And this is something that we don't think enough about when it comes to all social networks. When you are on a social network of any kind, you're uploading data to it, typing, taking photos of yourself, selfies of your food and stuff. There are real people, other human beings on the other end of that, in the server room, in the databases, in the data stores and stuff like that, that can see your stuff, right? We sort of just kind of blindly trust, and we've seen the consequences of it, we trust Facebook to use our data appropriately. But when you have something like an email server, like when I used to work in a bank, I was the thought police and I had to read other people's email all day long to make sure they weren't sharing stuff that that was inappropriate. There's a whole quarantine section, and it was implied, because IT policies were still fairly new back then, that you did not have an expectation of privacy at work. So if Trust Insight sets up a Mastodon server, guess who can see what's on it? The people running it, right? So a big consideration as a user is who's running this thing, and if I have private conversations, do I want those people to be able to see them?
Right. No, and that's a big deal. I used to work for a company similar in sort of the time frame, like IT policies were new, and the person who was responsible for policing the emails abused that power a lot and would mention personal things to the women in the office of, hey, so how's that, how was that first date or something, which is a really icky example, but it's a very real example. So if you are a new user who is not setting up your own server, who is joining someone else's server, do a little bit of research as to who these people are, and would you be comfortable with them knowing your innermost secrets? And do you need to set up your own personal boundaries to say, this is as much as I'm willing to share, and then I need to restrain myself and not go ahead and have those conversations online?
Yep. And that applies for all social networks, right?
Yes.
There are some things you probably just shouldn't talk about. But I would expect communities, for example, like we mentioned, women in analytics, women in data science, I think there would be a strong benefit to them setting up their own servers, because they have that existing circle of trust already with their community to say, okay, we're certifying this is a safe place. Right. We know who our IT team is. We know who our tech experts are. And the same is true for even a larger corporation, right? If you're Target or you're Walmart, you can say, yeah, we've got our data security team in place. We already have to obey this pile of regulations this high. So your account is safe here. And because you need, like any social network, you need contact information to sign up for an account. Again, for the larger brands that have the resources to do this right, if you put it in the policies and you obtain consent, guess what? It's another marketing channel where that is yours to own, that you can reach out to people and say, you could direct message your entire server and say, hey, sale on pumpkin spice stuff this week at Walmart. And it's your server. You can do that.
Right. Sean, what are you thinking about all this?
Yeah, I'm going to wait until WP Engine is like, hey, $29 a month for your own Mastodon server. Just click here. And that's what I'm looking to do. I'm definitely not going to be like building an entire server that the world can hammer on. And yeah, that's just like way too much headache. And that is an interesting point, though, of like, especially women in analytics, if they had their own server, there is something to be said for that like, okay, this is run by the women in analytics team. So you can be pretty much assured of privacy and that your data is going to be handled responsibly. That's a lot better than like signing up on TikTok where all of China is watching you every single minute of every single day.
It's true. And this re-emphasizes the importance of brand and the importance of how trusted your brand is. I could very easily see us setting up a Mastodon server and opening it up to the analytics for marketers community and say, like, hey, we're providing this as a service to you. It's costing us literal actual dollars to run this thing. But we certify that it is safe for you to do so. And I could see, again, for anybody that's already got a community of some kind, you could provide this as an extra service to your community. And that, of course, if people start using it and such, then you have yet another way to reinforce the loyalty of your community.
So it sounds like the big takeaways, so there's a few different audiences. One, if you are just an individual, it might make sense for you to secure your name and your handle, but you can sort of take your time figuring out, how you want to, join it, what communities. If you're a large brand, it probably also makes sense to secure your name and your handle. But just sort of randomly signing up for it's probably not a good use of your time. Like, I personally, I'm not going to race to go sign up for anything because I am still in that due diligence phase of what would be my goal of being there. Do I have the time to spend there? what do I want to get out of it for me personally? I feel like there's a lot of panic around what's happening with Twitter. I totally get that. I respect that. That doesn't necessarily mean go sign up for Mastodon because it's the next right thing. Explore it, understand your reasons for being there, understand the reasons for your brand being there, and then sort of proceed, with all the advice we're trying to give, especially around setting up your own server. If it is not your skill set, find someone whose skill set it is, period.
And I'm going to keep setting up our server because I, as a data person, am fascinated to see what data we get from the Federation. Can it be archived? Can it be analyzed? Because again, that's kind of what we do is analytics and data and understanding what's possible. Because again, if there's a way to bring in that data from the rest of the Federation, boy, that would be, there's so many issues right now with services like Twitter and saying like you can only get the last 7 days worth of tweets and stuff on something, and you have to pay $1 gazillion to them for the unrestricted data feed. If it's like blockchain systems where, if you tie into the public blockchain, you get a copy of the whole thing. If I tie into this and get a copy of the entire federated network or the portions that I care about, that could be super helpful. That could be super helpful for doing influencer identification, network mapping, topic analysis. Even if we never actually operate the server publicly, I would still be very curious to see what data is available.
Mm-hmm. John, what are your takeaways?
Yeah, there is some interesting things on that front as far as what do you get if you're in the Federation? How much stuff can you peel out of there and scrape that could have some real interesting opportunities. I'm going to sit back and wait. My big thing, I see a lot of good stuff going on LinkedIn. I think this is a great opportunity to transfer to more of a, just keep it all business, and hopefully people will get more traffic over there because that drives a lot of action for us on a bunch of fronts. So that's where I'm going to be heading to. And I don't know. I can freely admit here, I coughed up my $8. I bought a blue check. I'm not afraid to, try this for a couple months and see what happens. And, I might as well have a front row seat for the fire and explosion to see it all happen.
Well, there is more than one John Wall in the world, so I totally get it. You need to be the first and the only.
Exactly. Lock it down in a way. The good news is John's career is pretty much winding up, so I've finally managed to survive.
I'm still working on it, and my doppelganger's dead.
He's
been dead since 2007.
Reservoir Dogs is still a thing. Like there's still posts that come up about Christopher Penn, but yeah, for the most part, there's no new news at least.
I'm the only me, and you guys are grateful for that.
You're unique. Unique and special, just like everyone else.
Oh, just like everyone else. I think that's a good place to pause for today.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We will see you all next week. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.